What's up, everybody? This is Guilherme. We're with Robby, and we're about to talk to you, we're nerdy people, about something great BioShock. More specifically, Burial at Sea Part 2, the final DLC piece for BioShock Infinite, just came out a couple of days, weeks ago, um, and it's pretty great. And the ending was amazing, and the story is so good. Robby, what did you think of Burial at Sea?
Um, I think myself, as many people, we left we kind of left with a sour taste in our mouth at the end of the first Burial at Sea. Not that it wasn't good, but it was only like an hour and a half, 2 hours long,
Yeah,
and it didn't give us really much depth into that world or what was really going on. It was kind of and just so you know, before we get started, guys, this is a spoiler cast. We are going to be drilling the
true.
crap out of every piece of this story. So
So
if
if
you don't want
you,
to listen to
yeah,
this, if you don't want to ruin this, we assume anybody listening right now has played BioShock 1, 2, BioShock Infinite, and these two parts of Burial at Sea.
and we
So,
advise you to not listen if you haven't played because it's so good.
yes,
We don't want to ruin it for you.
absolutely. We don't want to be those people, but we're warning you.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, I I loved it. I loved this as a whole. This is a whole story, and because that's how I'm taking it. I'm not separating it as a parts. Right at this point,
Yeah, me too. Me too. I
I have
think
it all together.
I I think like it's clear now that part one of Boreas in particular was really a setup for all of this. It was like the first chapter of the story.
Yes, absolutely. It was kind of like the Star Wars to an Empire Strikes Back almost. Like it was just a little taste of greatness. Um,
Yeah.
and just a softball pitch ready to get it knocked out of the park.
It
And
was. It
boy,
was. It was the Batman Begins to the Dark Knight.
absolutely, absolutely. It was so well done. Okay, so let's get some recap here really quick. Burial at Sea Part One. You're playing as Booker. You're in Rapture. You are a version of Booker that lives in Rapture. You play this detective who is going after this girl. I believe her name is Sally.
Yes, and
Um,
Elizabeth hired you.
yeah, Elizabeth hires you to find Sally because um, she just needs her. She doesn't tell us why. She just needs her. Well, at the end of the level, at the end of the part one, you find out that it was all a ruse. That Elizabeth really just kind of wanted to get you away, um, so she could set up you to die. So
Hmm.
she could kill you. And
Because Booker
sh- yeah, Book
is
is Comstock.
yeah, his Comstock, and that version of Booker kind of fled to Rapture after he did all the bad stuff as Comstock, so she wanted revenge. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's pretty confusing at times, but the Elizabeth on Boreas is the Elizabeth of the game, right?
Yes, because Elizabeth at the end of BioShock Infinite, she leaves and goes to Paris to live her life in Paris.
Yeah, and she becomes omniscience, omniscient. So she knows what can happen, like, because like we've talked about on the podcast. You should listen to WeTheGamercast as well. How at the end of Infinite they set up this great thing that, like, there's always a man, there's always a lighthouse, there's always a city, which is basically there's always the man, there's always the choice, and there's always the consequence. So Elizabeth knew all the choices and all the consequences, so she basically could see the future, could see the past, and use that to her advantage to catch other Comstocks on other dimensions, to punish them for what Comstock did.
Yes. And so she's basically going on a tirade. This and see that's the one question I have because I'm trying not to get confusing to the listeners and to myself at the same time, but the way Burial at Sea Part 2 begins, you are a different Elizabeth than the Elizabeth in Part 1. And so it leads me to believe that because of what that Elizabeth did in Rapture at Part 1, it sent out like a ripple effect, and the Elizabeth that we know from Part 1, I mean from BioShock Infinite, she saw what happened and she went back to save Sally. Like that's what I understand.
Uh it may be that, because that was the one thing I kind of got hooked up on part two as well, because I get that she went too far. She changed time and dimensions too much. She played around more than she could have, more than she should have, and that had a ripple effect on the other Elizabeths, and they lost their powers. I think that the Elizabeth at part two is kind of like a version of the Elizabeth of part one.
Yes, a version. I'm just saying it's not the same one
Yeah, I mean it's
because
like,
she dies at the end of the first one.
yeah, I think she kind of, it's weird, but I think she kind of like, maybe, I don't know, that Elizabeth from part one was kind of like the Elizabeth of that world plus the Elizabeth that we know, and then they got split up. I don't know. That was kind of confusing to me. I'm sure
I the the
there's
way
a
I saw it,
mm.
it's just me. The way I saw it is that the Elizabeth of BioShock Infinite is the only one that can travel through all the dimensions, that can travel through the tears. That's how I perceive it because she's the one who's got her part of her pinky in another world. Um,
Actually, wait. It just occurred to me that maybe that the Elizabeth, I think that all Elizabeth had lost it. I don't know, man. If that's the case, then that means the Elizabeth of part one is the Elizabeth of Infinite, because she was the one that could travel dimensions.
say that. I'm so sorry. Say that one more time, bud.
Like, if the only Elizabeth that can travel through dimensions is the Elizabeth of Infinite because she lost her pinky,
Uh
that
huh.
means the part one Elizabeth is the Infinite Elizabeth because she could travel through dimensions.
Okay. Well then. Okay. Then that theory of mine is wrong because
What I'm
um
thinking is that Elizabeth killed Booker on part one. She killed Booker before he could do all the Comstock stuff. So it kind of made a paradox and made that the Elizabeth of that world, it made sure that she did not lose her pinky as a kid, so she lost the powers because of that. Maybe it's that, maybe it's not. I don't know. I'm sure there's a link you can find on the internet that explains everything.
yeah. Uh, so let's because we'll get bogged down on which Elizabeth is which, but essentially what happens at the beginning of two is that a Elizabeth, the Elizabeth from Infinite, we are clear that is that at least that Elizabeth at the end of Infinite is the same Elizabeth of Part Two of Burial at Sea,
Yeah, pretty
because
sure that because she
yes,
lost the
because
powers.
yes, she lost her power. She is in Paris, because she always wanted to go to Paris, and so that is where she is. And then I thought that was kind of cool as well. We kind of had a Beauty and the Beast kind of intro where everyone's saying bonjour to her. I thought that was just kind of a
Hmm.
cool nod to that. I don't know if you caught that or not, but
Yeah, yeah.
I got a little little Beauty and the Beast Disney action going on there. But so this Elizabeth sees what happens, or I don't know if she feels bad or what is her motivation, but she wants to go back and go to Rapture and save Sally from being killed and used by this Elizabeth that is using her essentially. She's trying to stop this from happening. She feels she's guilt ridden and she's trying to fix what she has done, which is a constant, which is kind of funny because it's a constant circle. Her father did the same thing, wanting to, you know what I'm saying, like trying to
Yeah.
fix
Hmm.
everything he's done, and it was just a nice little another, sins will be passed down from their fathers. She's trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, I get that.
Um, but she goes through and she tries to stop this from happening, and then most of the game we spend in Rapture with Elizabeth, and it's a completely different gameplay. What did you think, Guilherme?
I think that I love that gameplay so much. I kind of wish that was the essential Bioshock gameplay all the time, because it just fit the game so well. It fit the series so well. It kind of reminded me of Dishonored, you know. And I love the crossbow and the going stealth. It was probably the most fun I've had gameplay wise in Bioshock.
Yeah, it was actually, I don't know if you saw this, but it was kind of hard. Some of the stealth stuff was not easy.
Really, I thought it was kind of easy actually.
I don't know what it is. You know what it is? I'm horrible at stealth. Like I
I
really am.
I thought the first part of the Odyssey was pretty hard because they didn't set the gameplay so well with the level designs. I don't know, but like when I played stealth, it was pretty like if I remained in stealth and unseen, I did it like no problem.
Yeah, well, good for you, man. I sucked. Um, but like, I'm just not good at stealth games. It's just like Deus Ex. It's just like this Metal Gear game. I'm just not very good at stealth. I actually kind of have to work on it a lot
Hmm.
to get through. Um, the gameplay was different. It was fun. It was great. Also, taking her powers away, even though I don't think they had to do that. But I know why they did. They wanted to make her human. They didn't want to make her seem like this
I mean,
super powerful being.
she was an omniscient being that could open portal to other dimensions and time. So
The only reason why I say that is because it is kind of confusing story wise
yeah.
how she doesn't have her finger.
Okay.
Like that's the only confusing thing. But other than that, it was fantastic. But now that we talk about the gameplay, it was still gorgeous. The voice acting was fantastic as usual. But let's talk about this plot a little bit.
Okay.
Um, she goes after she goes after to save Sally, and we get a little job mission, some missions by a doctor from Rapture
Yeah.
that we
Also
will all
Suchong.
remember, Su Chung. What'd you think, man?
Like it was awesome because of where it led us. You know, it led us right to Colombia and playing in that place again and see, like it was actually like this it's the second Colombia. It's from when Booker and Elizabeth go to a parallel dimension where the civil war has started, and seeing why like the Vox girl, which whose names I forgot, she seen why she did what she did, and just one little second seeing you and Booker, like that was so awesome for me. And it's great how it all connects everything, you know. And we're gonna talk about like you get the missions from Atlas, and it's because of you that Atlas can get the Jack from the first game to hijack the plane and do
I
everything.
loved it.
Like the way they connect all of it,
They connected
Columbia,
everything.
yeah, the way they connect Columbia to Rapture of BioShock One, you know,
And two,
yeah, and two, like, but like I just say one because one is the post crisis, you know,
yeah.
Rapture.
Um, what I thought was so incredible was finding out the connection between Su Young and the Doctor from Bioshock Infinite that created the
Fink, yeah.
Fink. The fact that and again, it was just so mind blowing to find out that those two had found a way to start communicating with each other between dimensions, and they were between worlds, and they were actually developing. One was developing the Big Daddy while the other one was developing the Songbird.
And that's crazy because I'm sure a lot of people had a lot of theories connecting Songbird to the Big Daddies when Infinite came out, and seeing that it was actually true, that they had something to do with one another, that was awesome.
It was just because what happens at a certain point in the game. I mean, I don't know if you'll get to show this gameplay, Guilherme, but you actually, when you're going through and getting the hair pieces, you're getting Elizabeth's hair basically from Fink. You go through and you watch these tape recordings
Of the
um,
Songbird.
of Songbird and their development of them, and finding out that Songbird's connection to Elizabeth and Big Daddy's connection to Little Sisters actually had nothing to do with science. That
Yeah.
it was no chemical. There was no what's it called? There was no conditioning to it. It was all about heart.
Yeah, because they tried that, but they failed.
It failed every time.
And like the best part of the game for me is when you heal a Big Daddy, and actually like the little sisters heal him, and you just like help them help him, and because of that he becomes thankful, and because of that he attacks and kills Su Chong after he mistreats the little sisters, and you get to see wow they like there's a real connection here. And that was a Bioshock's world is a lot of there's a lot of darkness in that world when you stop to think about it, and seeing how these characters interact and how they relate to each other. That was such a good point, such a good moment, such a good note to end on.
Yeah, I love the fact that it felt more about the world of BioShock than it did about the characters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Like they focus Levine focused so much on connecting the world and building a world to leave than about Booker and Elizabeth. But then at the very end, he blows it up and shows us that your mission to retrieve the ace in the hole, which is this formula, which is supposed to help Atlas take down Andrew Ryan. You come to find out that it's actually the formula when it's decoded says "Would you kindly."
yeah,
And it's the phrase that makes Jack the character from the first game who you play makes him come. It's what triggers him to crash the plane and come back to Rapture.
yeah,
And which I love the connection there. And then I loved it even more when they showed us the cutscene with Jack being the one who welcomes the little sisters at the end of two.
yep.
It I mean, overall, what would you score this, or what would you rate this overall BioShock story, Guilherme? What would you say about it?
Wow, I think that it's one of the best stories told in video games. You know, the overall arc. I think that the reason why it's so good is because it is this extreme crazy story about, you know, different dimensions and time travel and underwater cities and like chemicals that change your genetic structure, crazy stuff out there, you know, over the top. But at the heart of it, there are these characters and the humans' relationship that they have, and all that they do. You know, there's a real motive behind. Especially, I think Elizabeth and Booker were the ones that really connected with me more than Jack and the Little Sisters. But like everything, the it's a human story on extraordinary circumstances, and it's really great. It's one that will be remembered very fondly throughout the years to come.
What? Because I remember something that you said on Twitter and on Facebook. Where do you put this overall story
Mm.
in all time stories in video games?
Like it, to me, a story is more interesting when the characters carry the plot than the plot carries the characters. So that's why The Last of Us is my favorite game of all time, because I've never cared so much about two characters like Joel and Ellie. That's why a game like Metal Gear is because Metal Gear has this crazy story that not always makes sense, but I love Snake at the center of it, you know, and so on and so on. And this is very much the same thing for me. But it has a crazier. So I can't just say, oh, this is the third best story I've ever played, but like it's one of the best because it has the characters as the main point, but it also has this amazing atmosphere, this amazing world crafted around them that just makes everything better. Because it seems that the great thing about BioShock is that Ken Levine, especially, he had it all figured out. The world, the characters, the social elements, everything. He had all of it in his head. So he created the atmosphere, he created the plot, but at the center of it, characters and Elizabeth and Booker and Jack and whoever else. So that's my favorite part about it. Really, one of the best, or probably like when you think about it in a trilogy, you know, it's probably the best trilogy in games. I'd say one of the best, maybe, because two wasn't as good as the other ones, but
Hmm.
overall, you know, it's so good. Story, just story wise. You know, the gameplay and everything we can talk about later, but story wise, it's definitely one of the best.
I I agree with you, and I honestly, I even though they give us that nod and they kind of connected to it, more focused on connecting Infinite and Bioshock
Yeah,
One.
which are the irrational games game.
Yeah, which are the ones that Ken Levine wrote.
Yeah.
So, so if we stick to that, and I think I've talked about on the podcast before, and I've told you numerous times, Guilherme, that BioShock 1 and BioShock Infinite are number 1 and 2 of my favorite games of all time, favorite stories of all time. That, like, I love them. Like,
Hmm.
it just resonated with me. Complexity, all this stuff, everything that involved it, all involved with it. I I have to say, as a whole, saying BioShock, BioShock Infinite, and this DLC that kind of connects the whole world together, that ranks probably in my top 3 game stories of all time. It
Yeah,
really does.
it would
Like, I know,
be somewhere up there for me too.
yeah, it is just so fantastically done. Like, and I know people are going to complain about the metaphysical elements of it and how it it has some loopholes, but you know what? Whenever you're dealing with something as complex as metaphysics and something that complex, you're going to have plot holes, just like with any kind of time travel
Yeah.
um, movie or video game. Like,
Besides, like that's secondary to the characters, I think.
yes, absolutely. The characters is what's most important in those games. I mean, even though in Bioshock 1, it's not about your character per se, it's more about the world of Andrew Ryan versus Atlas. Like, those two things really carry the story and it makes you care about it. Um,
Besides, the worlds Rapture and Columbia are, in a sense, characters themselves.
yes, yes, that's a very good point. Very good point. Um, I mean, that's all I have to say.
Yeah,
Um, I love the story. I recommend it to anyone and everyone. Um, Elizabeth really rocked it,
yeah, I
and
agree.
finding out that she is the one who starts the whole thing and she's the one who ultimately ends it is just a fantastic way to tell the story.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess that's all we need to say, really. So now let's all hope that Bioshock doesn't become something bad now that Levine is gone.
Yep. Um, well, that's all I gotta say.
Yeah, me
And
too. So thank you for listening to our little spoiler cast here. We hope you have enjoyed. Please comment about your connections and how you enjoy or not enjoy the Bioshock story on the comments on the website withthenerdy.com or on the We the Gamercast YouTube channel. We'll see you later.